Welcome to the 4 steps to feminine archetype. Step into the feminine archetype. How are you today, Rob?
Good, good. It's always nice to use new technology, but like you see, that's always a learning curve.
Mm-hmm. I think I feel like I'm like on fire here. Okay, a little too bright.
Yeah. But eventually, it'll give us that FaceTime with you guys, and that more personal interaction, which we crave. We want to know what's going on with you. We want some feedback. We want you to see us in all our foibles.
Mm-hmm.
We're okay with that.
And we get along when we're messing up. It's just, part of life. And it really, just when you try new things, sometimes things don't work out perfectly. And it's about just having fun with it. So let's talk about what our topic is today. And our topic is the feminine archetype and how we get into it. And I have this great quote that we read on our first call that I want to reread for you. If I have it here. I don't think I have it here.
By the man himself.
The man himself, Carl Jung. And he said that, what did he say? He said, the feminine love, which is one of the most moving and unforgettable memories of our lives, the mysterious root of all growth and change, the love that means homecoming, shelter, and long silence from which everything begins and which everything ends. Mm-hmm. So the power of a woman, the women in our life, the women that raised us, and the women that came before us, incredible power. The first farming was discovered by women. If women weren't on the planet, we'd still be running around killing animals and, or killing each other. Well, we're still doing that, but
that's still happening. That quote, he really was talking about the mother archetype, but it is the feminine principle in nature and in the psyche.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to, let's talk about just a little bit about what's going on in the world. And one of the things, I did some research on women in power, and 80% of all leadership positions in companies are held by men. So if the world is run by corporations, which a lot of the world is, corporations basically move the economy.
Right.
If they're all run by men, then there's an imbalance.
Oh, absolutely. Because it'll be lopsided. Mm-hmm. And just like, Jung says that if your psyche is lopsided, that it's run by logic, by consciousness, by this kind of action attitude, you will be only living half your life, because the intuitive, emotional, nurturing aspect of your psyche will be dormant. And really his individuation process is about reconnecting those two elements. And in the world in general, and Jung really gives us this vast, expansive view of humanity, culture, history, we're able to see that if those things happen in society as well, that is, if a culture is run very much by the male logical principle only, then it's very lopsided and it's very neurotic in a sense, in that there's no balance.
And so just a little bit about myself. I was in the corporate world for many, many years, most of my life until I was 39. So I did a lot of,
Did you ever do the cubicle
work? I really didn't expect to be a businesswoman. I really wanted to, in my family, it was all about getting married and having babies and being a grandmother eventually, and, being the mother of the household. And really, truly, that's what I wanted. I wanted to really be the mom. And I just, just kind of worked because I hadn't met anyone. So I was kind of moved up the ladder, and a lot of the men that I were around, it was like, wasn't equal. It always felt like the women were more secretarial and administrative, and the men were the ones in the corner
Mm.
offices. And then I started working in New York, and I started seeing all these women in offices, and I was like, wow, and women with college degrees. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that there were women that were, had careers. It's just something I was never around. And then eventually I ended up working. I was telling you this morning, I was working at a startup, internet startup, and I was the only woman besides the person that did the reception, the girl that did reception and answer the phones. And I was basically helping all these men create an online bridal registry. And none of them knew anything about being a bride. None of them knew anything about what women want. And then they ended up, telling, arguing with me over what kind of retailers we should have. And the funny thing is that the retailers that they picked, one of them was a fly fishing retailer. And I'm like, what woman is going to pick fly fishing equipment as for her bride? It was just crazy.
There might be a few.
Well, maybe one or two, maybe in Colorado, but I mean, I was in Colorado at the time, but it was just like, me being a woman had no value at all. They were like, we know better, and we're these big tough guys. And I'm sure, not all men are like that, but it was just kind of like that culture. And I think a lot of women are around that. There's men that either don't know how to act around a woman, they just kind of don't know what to do, and they just don't bother. And then there's other men that have been conditioned to think that they're not as equal. And so we're fighting this in all parts of our life, and then when we go out to date in relationships, what used to frustrate me is all the time is all these women were doing personal development. And I was thinking, why are we all doing all the work? Like, why aren't the men doing the work? And why is it our fault that we're in these relationships and these dating tips that tell us you should act this way? This is what a guy wants. And everything was very submissive. And I was just really kind of caught up in this whole idea of like, I wasn't equal in work, and I wasn't equal in love. And I really found my own power through the process, and Jungian psychology really helped me individuate from that conditioning. But I really stand for women really having the relationship of their dreams, feeling honored in their relationship, but also going for what they want in life and creating something besides what the world tells them what they should be.
Oh, absolutely. And as men, we all have mothers, we all have sisters and nieces, and we should support equality in all ways. If we lose half of humanity's imagination and creativity and productivity, it's just not a good way to work. Even if you just look at the bottom line of business, you want to give people that freedom to create and to have equal footing in companies and in businesses. And it just makes sense all the way around. Now, having said that, it's not about just kind of splitting it up as men are bad and women are good. We know a lot of women support that culture of keeping women in a submissive role, because culture is so powerful. When you're inside the culture, you don't see it. It's like a fish in water, basically. You don't see that you're acting according to your conditioned mind, according to what the culture has told you is possible and the way things should be.
It's so funny is when I was at 23, 24, I went to this seminar, and it was 400 women, and it was given by a man. And he taught us the difference between men and women. And I think you had mentioned to me that, there really isn't that much different. We're culturally different. And so he taught us how we're culturally different, or how we're raised or conditioned differently.
Absolutely.
And it was the first time I thought, I was wondering why my dad and my brother was so different than me, or thought differently. And then it was the first time I realized there was actually a difference between men and women in the culture sense. But on a deep level, we're pretty much the same, and we both have masculine and feminine. It's just that the way we've been programmed is to take on certain personas and roles in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can look at the biology of it. Our brains do work slightly differently, but we're more similar than different. That's for sure. As far as the neuropsychology, as far as the psychology of personality and culture, that depends on the culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some cultures that are very restrictive to
Mm-hmm.
women,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. There are also restrictions placed on men based on cultural roles.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Uh, then there is kind of the new emerging world culture with technology being spread all over the planet. People now are aware of this, that you don't have to live in your little cultural bubble
Mm-hmm.
anymore. You can choose. And so women worldwide are waking up to this idea that, we can create businesses, we can create communities. And the banks and the lending systems understand that if you lend money to women and you support women,
It's a good investment.
it's a good investment. They create community, they invest in their children and education, those kind of things. Whereas often, not always, but if you lend to men, it'll be more of a buddy system, kind of they'll help their friends and then
Mm-hmm.
create business for themselves, but not necessarily invest in the community.
Well, and in the coaching industry, I noticed that the men are very, they teach this kind of very active rush, throw a lot of money at something, and then part of it'll stick, kind of like this. They call it spray and pray mentality, and all a lot of these women. I just came from a women's group, and a lot of business entrepreneurs, and they're kind of caught up in this idea that that's the only way to
Hmm.
do business. And I think there's an opportunity for us as women to not to cultivate and be more creative in business, and be more creative in how we do it and how we run companies that can be really, really powerful in the world, and actually
Hmm.
shift the way business is working, where automation isn't taking over jobs, and there's really it's good for the bottom line, but what about the human factor? That whole logical, driven by the numbers, can all how does that impact society as a whole? If you're just getting richer, does that really impact the people around you? And what about the human factor? And I
Hmm.
think women think about more what impact on the community, and not all, like, I don't want to make this about men against women, but just the machine of the corporations have done that. And I think that
Right.
the coaching industry also has been taken over by this idea that it's just do, rush, rush, rush. And women are exhausted. That's not how they operate. They operate more with, like, that's why we're doing video now, because we want to be closer to you. We want to see you. We want to, or you, at least you see us at this point. And we want to do
Mm.
more interactive work, because we know that just there's a human connection that needs to happen, instead of just getting emails and just, you know, seeing people at a distance.
Yeah. But going back to what you were talking about, the women's conference,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very important piece that is happening right now, where let's say corporate women and entrepreneurs, women that have businesses that have big ideas, are now really creating their own culture in a
Mm-hmm.
sense by joining in these organizations, these conferences, and talking about what is, let's say, what is a more compassionate way of doing business. What was your experience in the Inc. Women's Conference?
Well, one of the things that you would never hear at a men's conference is that, men talk about strategies and marketing. Every woman, billionaire, including Sarah Blakely, she really impressed me. She's a billionaire. She came up with the Spanx brand. She said that the number one thing that helped her become successful was her own personal growth, that having a life coach, having mentors, helping her work with becoming the person
Mm.
that has a billionaire business is what contributed to the growth. And every single person said, you have to understand your psychology. You have to understand how you relate with others. So if you're going to have a team, and how you're going to relate to money, and all those things that we have about success that we have to come to terms with. It's not just about having all the right tools from a business standpoint, having the right credentials after our name, and having the right strategy, business strategy, and PowerPoint presentation. It's really about what's in our heart, who we are being, and what we're allowing ourselves to be. And that was really impressive to me. And there is actually research out right now that says that a lot of women out there that want to be entrepreneurs or want to create something for themselves, there's a lack of mentors out there. There's not enough women that are stepping up. So by you becoming successful, you are becoming a signpost for other women. You're becoming that lighthouse at the end of a stormy sea, saying, here's land, here's where you can land. And it's very important for all of us as women to step into that. So let's talk about, well, how do we access this power? A lot of us, our idea of being a woman has been conditioned in us of what the limits are. So the first step really is to understand that there's this house of mirrors, that what are we really experiencing in life? What is life about? What is it about, Dr. Ron?
Well, we certainly know that the way we experience the world and the way we see our own limitations and the opportunities that we see in the world, let's say if somebody hasn't done any personal work at all, they don't really understand or haven't really examined their mind, like Socrates says in The Unexamined Life, right? What they're going to experience is their own conditioned mind, meaning what the culture, what their personal history with their family has taught them. And the world will simply reflect back that limitation, or that both the limitations and the possibilities. And in essence, it will be a conditioned mind seeing itself in the world. But the person believes that, well, that's just the way it is, right? That's the way culture operates. That's the way the world operates. And those are my limitations and my options. That cannot be further from the truth. We know from Jungian and depth psychology that if you are able to transcend those limitations through that inner work, like you were saying, that personal development, then you have choices. Instead of playing out those limited concepts that were given to you by culture and family, you are able to expand beyond those. Now, it's a process, obviously. It's not going to just happen just because you hear us speak on a podcast or something, but that process is very doable, and it transforms the whole psyche, as Jung says.
Well, just getting back to the House of Mirrors, a lot of people believe that what they're seeing is there's an outside reality outside of the mind.
Absolutely.
And that they're seeing like there's a physical world out there that's separate from them, and that they're interacting with it. That's how the ego kind of sees the world. And it's if you come to the world with that idea, if you live in the world with that idea, everything feels powerless. You feel small. You feel like you can't really impact the world.
Right.
And what really is a shame is that a lot of people talk about the law of attraction. And it's such a disservice to what consciousness is, because the law of attraction is assuming that you're this little person, and in your little brain, if you hold a picture, something out there will be attracted to you. And in actuality, it's really the law of correspondence. It means that outside world is corresponding to what you hold in your mind. So if you can only see things as you are, not as the world really is. And so what we need to do is you need to come up with a process to see outside the glasses or the veil of your limitations. Yeah. But you first have to, the first step is to acknowledge that everything you experience in your life is a reflection of your mind. It's not, the limit isn't out there. It's reflecting back what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly for entrepreneurs or anybody that has a vision for their life, this knowledge is really important to have.
So step one is knowing it's a house of mirrors. Step two is really understanding what the ego is. And I think you touched on that already. We've talked
Yeah.
about it a little, but if you think of a circle, like just a round circle, empty. There's nothing in it, like the moon, like this beautiful, pure light. And imagine that the ego is covering most of it, like just kind of like clouding it. And there's maybe a little sliver of light around it. Like when we have the lunar eclipse, right? It eclipses our potential and basically throws a veil over what is possible for us. So if that circle is pure potential, the ego just covers it over and makes it smaller, limited, and really creates all the so-called problems we have in our life.
Yeah, I mean, Jung says that we need the ego, especially in the beginning of life. We need to establish ourselves as a personality, right? What he called the persona, and establish and create a strong ego with strong defenses. And it's at that point, it's kind of me against the world. I'm going to go out there and do something. So I need that armor of defense and potential and kind of self-assurance that the ego gives us. But at a certain point, that becomes a hindrance because the ego, the way we created it and constructed it, is very much based on our personal experiences from our family and our culture. And so it's only giving us that limited perspective.
So we can only live based on what we've personally experienced.
Yes.
So if you grew up with millionaires in your household, you most likely will grow up to have more money, not only because of inheritance, but because you have that kind of idea of abundance. But if you grew up poor, it could be really harder for you to imagine outside of that kind of framework. And so how the ego really was first developed is to protect us. So it creates this pattern of pain and pleasure. So it moves us away from pain. And for the most part, it's really good because we don't want to walk in the middle of the street without, getting hit by a bus. So it protects the body. If we're hurting in our body, it's a sign that something's off balance. So it can heal. And so it's really good to have that mechanism. And it's also good to have that mechanism, especially when we're young, is because it moves us away from emotional pain. Because if we dwell in our emotional pain, we have something happen to us, like a shock, we get lost at the store. It doesn't have to be anything bad, huge. Although some people do have, very intense things happen in childhood. But we're really talking about everyone has this, that we find our ego helps us find a way to feel better again. So it'll either distract us, or it'll tell us a story, or we'll run to mom or run to dad, and that person gives us comfort. Maybe it's food, maybe it's running away and locking ourselves in our room and doing something that takes us away from that pain. And so it learns basically how we can cope in life. And if we didn't have that, again, we would feel like there'd be something wrong with us. And I think a lot of people use that mechanism and call it our wounds, which is not true at all. This is not woundedness. It's actually the sign of a healthy mind.
Yes. And because our past is essentially carried on in memory, basically, it's our recorded past. We bring it with us into the present through memory. And through the meaning we ascribe to those memories. And those meanings are essentially a fiction. A lot of people find this hard to believe, right?
No, it really happened, Dr. Rob.
Yeah. And it did happen, but the meaning we ascribe to it, the kind of that weight that we place on it and say, this is either a wound or this is the best thing that ever happened to me, is arising from our own mind. It's a decision our mind is making. And if we let the mind make that decision automatically, let's say unconsciously, we're in for a wild ride, basically, because the ego is based on survival. And so it's going to make up a kind of a fiction about our life that is based on circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the ego does, and this is really interesting, is that it's very influenced by how our parents saw the world too, and the people around us. So, and teachers early when we were younger, what they thought was good and bad, and then we just kind of absorbed that decision without really, examining it. And so we go off in life, and everything is about these rules that we made up about how life is and how I should be. And I think that one of the things I wanted to talk about really quick is that there's three main drivers of the ego. One is pride, which means that it doesn't want to feel shame. So it'll find a way, and sometimes we're driven by pride, where we want to be the best at something. We want to look good in front of others. We can't cry. We can't admit that we're wrong. We can't be, so gee, I don't know who that is. Does that sound familiar? And then there's, so it's defending shame. The next one is power, which is we want to get power over a situation. We don't we don't want to be the one beat up by the bully. So we don't ever want to be that helpless person. So we find mechanisms and tools to gain power. The third one is protection, and that's really physically, for physical protection. Also, vulnerability, to feel emotionally vulnerable. A lot of times people don't like to show like it wasn't okay to cry in front of your family, or maybe someone who was really dramatic. We decided we didn't want to be like them. So we had to kind of have this kind of protection around our own feelings. And so pride, protection, and power are the three main ways the ego drives our life. And if we're driven by those things, we're driven by the ego, and it's very, very limited. Now, that said, those aren't bad things. We don't want to be, make a fool of ourselves all the time. We want to have friends, but it's what I call the bell curve. It's like a bell curve, right? Where it helps you to some degree, but after a while it becomes very destructive. And so when it becomes more destructive, that's when we're really creating such a persona that there's no room for movement. And if you think about your ideas of being a woman, how have you used those things, and how is your feminine identity, the persona of the ego woman, how did she create her personality and her defenses around those ideas?
Yeah. So everything that doesn't fit into the persona that we create from this fiction of our life, we push it into the unconscious.
Or as Jung called, the shadow.
The shadow. And it's an unfortunate name because it doesn't mean what a lot of people ascribe it to mean, that it's our evil twin or this evilness. And I'll say it simply means it's a repository of the things that do not help us, do not help us in the world, do not help us survive, and do not fit our conception of who we are. And so we push them away, and they go into our personal unconscious. In other words, they don't go away. They simply become invisible to us, but they're still an active part of our psyche, which is then projected externally. So this is the mechanism, right, of how we see that mirror image. We think it's an external limitation. And so Jung says that the internal conflict that's going on in our head is essentially projected outward to where we see it out there. So we have a conflict with our mother, we're going to have a conflict in our relationships, perhaps, or even at work that's going to reflect that internal conflict.
And so we go in the world, and we're afraid to take risks. We're afraid to, we worry about what other people think. The woman, as a woman, sometimes we feel cut off from a financial success because we don't identify with it, or we reject it in some way. And so if we just don't work on that deeper level, if we just kind of fix our persona up and still polish it up with more pride, more power. I mean, a lot of the personal development I did early in my life was about building up that, being more powerful, Let's be powerful as women. Let's be and have pride and love ourselves, and watch out. Don't look for be careful of what other people think, and stay away from people that are mean, and keep your boundaries. And all that is driving the ego more. And so you're making a stronger ego, which is not bad, but after 30, you should be starting to let go of that ego. And there's a bigger, more powerful part of yourself, which is the true divine feminine archetype that actually can be birthed in you, that you can actually act outside of those patterns and start to really go for what you want.
Yeah.
And have something fresh and new in your life. So if you think about your life right now and that limit, what is outside of that box? Like, think about that now. Like, what is in the box of your life? If you had a little room that had everything you had, like the money you had, the type of relationships, and the family, dynamics, and, relationship with your kids, that is kind of baked in, basically. It's there, it's set. What is outside of that you want, that you have never experienced before, that you would really like to create? Just think about that.
Yeah, it's very much like the hierarchy of needs, right? Maslow's hierarchy of need. What motivates us in the beginning, and certainly when we're in ego, is a survival drive, right? It's a survival need. We want to be protected. We want to feel that we have those needs met, and there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, they're not wounds, they're not brokenness. It's just our basic instinctual drive. The second level is that we want that social acceptance, right? We want to feel like we're part of the group, that we've accomplished something in society, and being accepted as part of this group that is our peers and our culture and all that. But there are those elements in human beings that are transcendent to those things. They're
bigger than just being in the crowd.
Exactly.
Being liked.
Yes. They are basically self-actualizing, self-transcendence, right? Going beyond our personality, being connected to something bigger. And if you don't experience that in life, you're missing the biggest opportunity.
I know, that's why we're here, right? To discover like really what we're made of. We're really made of. And like you said, that like a mouse can survive, where the ego keeps us in that survival mode. But the tiniest animals, the bugs, cockroaches will survive all of us if we ever have a big destruction of the planet. I mean, so it's not that much effort to survive, but to really live, that's really where we want to be. I saw a quote one time, a Facebook quote. Don't you love this? Facebook wisdom is, I wasn't meant to come here and just pay bills and die. We were here to express something. And men and women both. Like women, I looked for around. I know that Jung talks about individuation, and when I was younger, I think I was in my early 30s, I watched Joseph Campbell's PBS, The Power of Myth, and The Hero's Journey, and it was two old men talking about Bill Moyers and him, and talking about the hero, and I was like, this is really interesting, but where are the women here, and I just never really resonated with that journey. I always felt like something's missing here. And if you look at the action movies, it's all about like, the ancient myths, of conquering the dragon and, slaying things. And I think women, it's beautiful. There's some women that are adventurous, but we're kind of made for something in a different way. And so over the years, I developed a process that I went through. It called Her Journey, which is the hero's journey for ladies, for the women. And just like with the hero's journey, men have a muse. They have that what we Jung call the anima, the inner Eve archetype that he connects to. We were just you think about a writer or an artist, they have a woman that they kind of imagine in their mind. A lot of times it's not their wife, it's just some woman they can't attain, someone that they can't attain. The knight holds the princess's flower in his to go off to battle, right? To his muse to live. And so us women, guess what we have? We have a male muse. And he is much different than the female muse, because The female muse is actually one woman for a man.
Mm.
And for a male muse, for a woman, he morphs and he changes. But there's a way to access that male muse. And he takes us on a journey. He's basically our ally, our wise ally in the journey to bring out the wise woman in us, so we can bring that to the surface. And he really, if you don't access this part of you, here's some signs that you're not connected to your inner Adam or this inner muse, is that you'll tend to be highly critical. The logic of the masculine energy overrides your mind, and it starts to overanalyze. I don't know if any of you can relate to that. Overanalyze everything and strategize and kind of overthinking. You go on a date and you're overthinking what happened, what you said, what you did. Almost like someone who's looking at a business plan and going, what strategy did I do wrong? You know? And so we get into this very highly critical, logical thinking.
Mm.
For a man, though, when he doesn't connect with his inner Eve, he becomes more emotional and more moody. So it's kind of the opposite. Like for women, we're supposed to be the emotional ones. So when we're not connected to that masculine energy, we tend to become highly critical. And so with her journey is like bringing that balance back in, bringing having us access that pure masculine. And when we do, what happens is all that noise in our head that are criticizing ourselves and confusion, it causes a lot of confusion. It creates this clear, intuitive channel for us to, on an intellectual level, see things clearly, so that we can cultivate in our world. As women, we're very creative and intuitive, but this inner Adam in us basically gives us that kind of focus and that drive to move, but also supports us. And so it's a really beautiful partnership. And I think you can't just worry, be in this power, be a powerful woman if you don't have access to the pure masculine archetype within us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is for Jung, tapping into the unconscious through this archetype of the inner Adam or the inner Eve. It was really the source of creativity. Mm-hmm. Not only artistic, but scientific ideas, business strategies, new inventions all came from that connection. I mean, that's why we talk about the muse and the male muse, because they give us this fountain of creativity that is really invaluable for us humans, and which is much needed nowadays. We have so many challenges in front of us that we all need to be at the top of our game in every way. We need to be really using our intelligence, our intuition, each other's inspiration to do the things that nature and the world is calling us to do.
And when so if you think about your conditioned feminine persona, the woman that you think you are as the ego, when you start to individuate, unconsciously in the deep collective unconscious is the pure divine woman within each of us. And we want to bring her to consciousness. We want to embody her, but she doesn't basically become a better ego. We want to basically have her own identity outside of the ego. Now, what happens is that, that circle I showed you, can you imagine like it all being eclipsed by the ego? Imagine that ego portion, the dark ego like covering, start to shrink, and that more potential in our conscious mind, more space in our mind can open up. So we're not all caught up in conditioning. We're more conscious. So this open space has to be filled with something. And so as a woman, it gets filled with the divine woman, this new embodiment of who we are as our potential versus this conditioned little girl. And that little girl is going to be there with us the rest of our life, protecting us and being scared and, going along for the ride. But if you think about a car on our wheel, she's been driving your whole life. She's been putting on the brakes. She's been steering in the wrong direction just to keep you safe. Imagine that she becomes a passenger and the divine woman becomes the driver. And she sees possibility where before that little girl saw limitations. She sees abundance before where that little girl saw not enough money or struggle. And it's really a beautiful journey of becoming that woman, because then you don't have to wait for the right time or wait for the right opportunities or feel like, well, when some lucky people will get the things that I want, or I'm going to pray for it. You become a co-creator with the divine. You really it's like your ego moves out of the way, and that what steps forward is this powerful force that is your rightful inheritance in the world. And it's a beautiful thing, because when you come from her, you become the divine woman. Guess what kind of relationship you're going to get? Guess what kind of business you're going to have? It's going to be more peaceful. It's not going to be run ragged where you're working all the time, and doing a lot of marketing and stress and numbers. And you're more into the playfulness and the creativity of it being an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur. Or you decide, I'm really tired of doing the numbers in my corporate job. I want to do something I love. I want to do photography. I want to do art. I want to do I want to create a book or write. I want to do something else with this beautiful mind of mine.
Something creative.
Yeah. And so it really opens up so much for us. And it's the journey we were meant to be on. It's not something that only a few people can get. There's a reason why you're listening here today, is because you're meant to be on this journey. It's a beautiful process. And so when you become the divine woman, what would you describe someone who's embodied that as, Rob?
I would describe her as Debbie.
Oh, you're so sweet.
No, really, when I met you, what I saw was somebody that was not waiting for the angels to deliver their dreams to them. You take life by the reins and drive it yourself. You say, thank you very much. I like angels and I like whatever's out there, but it's really up to me to create my life. And that's what I saw in you, that you were really willing to do the hard work, not just working out there, but looking inside and asking yourself questions like, what do I really want out of life? What am I here for? All those things that we call the examine life, you were willing to undertake. And it takes courage, obviously, because a lot of us think, well, I'm not going to like what I'm going to see when I look inside. But it's the only way to really take stock and to know where you're at and why you've created the kind of life you created. And then once you do that, you're able to work with it. You're able to move forward. Until you do that, all you're doing is defending yourself, protecting yourself.
And the most important thing is that none of this is about fixing yourself. I spent years, decades, working with my wounds and my inner child and my limiting beliefs, and all that stuff was just about building up the ego. When you're working on I'm not good enough, and of course I love my first book, Let Love In, but that's what it was about. There's a bigger part to way to work that we can access that is outside of the ego. And so that's really the process, is to recognize the ego. Like you said, thank you very much for helping me get me here. It's a beautiful thing. It did a beautiful job, but it doesn't have to drive anymore. It's now it's time for your true self to really express herself in the world. And there's something really amazing that you have to give to the world that the world is waiting to receive from you. There's little girls out there that want to be inspired by you, or little boys too. And there's men that want to love you. They want to love that. They want to connect to that woman. They don't want to connect to your ego. They want to connect to that woman. They want to, because you're would be embodying his muse in their conscious life.
Yeah. I just want to say we're all raised by women, regardless of our gender. And so, women really shape the way we see the world in a very direct way.
And so when you think about the world and your relationship, like how your relationship with your mother was, basically the world is the feminine energy. And so you're seeing what you believe about women reflected back to the world. And so, was your mother very nurturing? Was your mother overly protective? My mother was very protective. So I see the world sometimes as a little dangerous. I used to like kind of feel like I need to be in control more. And if you see the world, your mother was critical, you're going to see the world being very critical to you. And so you're seeing through that filter again of the ego of the past experience. Uh, there is a deeper love. And I think a lot of like our relationships with our mothers have been distorted by our own stories, right? We really didn't really see a lot of times the pureness of our moms. We made assumptions. And so those assumptions keep carrying out. So a lot of times when people do this work, they actually have a better relationship with their mom afterwards because they end the world because they start to see, have a better relationship with themselves.
Yeah, I mean, in psychological terms, you're not projecting anymore, meaning you're understanding that whatever conflict is arising is showing you something about your own mind, and that changes the whole dynamics because now you can not only work with it, but you understand that it's under your control, or to some, to the extent that you're willing to work with it and accept it as this is arising from my own mind, then you can change it. Whereas when you see it as, well, it's out there, what can you do without there except hope that it changes somehow?
I hate that.
Yeah. Try to get away from it.
So we're going to do a meditation in just a minute, but those of you who are, before we do that, I wanted to just mention again, those of you who missed our call on Tuesday we had this week, or Monday, I can't remember. The days are flowing together. We introduced our new program for next year, a leadership program called Evolve. It's for creative women who want to make a big mission in the world. And it's a year-long program where you'll be personally mentored by Rob and I. And we have a wonderful curriculum for this program, which is basically taking you through her journey, to the hero's journey for women. We're going to work on what is holding us back, what our drivers are, how our ego holds us back, how to create something fresh and new outside of our comfort zone, how to create wealth, how to create relationship, how to create our dreams come true, whether you're in a business that you want to have it to grow, or maybe you're in the corporate world and you want to find what your purpose is. And then for some people, it's like they're doing what they love, but they still haven't found that relationship and they wanted a longer term journey to find their true self. So Inner Adam is going to be the guide on our tour. He's going to take us on this journey, on her journey, and it's going to be a beautiful process with new visualizations, new teachings on my personal experience and what I've seen through the years of the process and how women work. And it's about crossing thresholds. It's about the mystical marriage between our conscious and unconscious, and the divine man and the divine woman. We're going to work with finding the treasure hard to find, which it will be easy to find if you do the program. And so we are launching it in January, but we have an early price. If you apply and sign up before November 15th, you can get the program regularly $15,000 for the year, but it's only 12 easy payments of $997, or you can pay in full for $89.97. So it's only $9,000 for pay in full. And all you need to do to reserve your spot is to put a $997 deposit down. And we do have some extra bonuses. The program includes 2 calls a month. We did a leadership program the past year, and a lot of people said they wanted more calls. So we added an extra call in. So 1 lecture and 1 live coaching call. You will get, we have 3 events throughout the year that are just for the Evolve members. No other outsiders can come. It's a smaller event, VIP. We have one in Hermosa Beach, where we live in California, right outside LA. We have one in New York City in the fall, where Rob loves.
East Coast.
And in the spring, we have one in Lisboa in Portugal, Lisbon.
Yeah, I used to live there in a former life.
Beautiful place. So you can pick 2 out of the 3. You also get 6 private coaching calls with Teresa, our lead coach. So you get some coaching with that, and a year in our Facebook group where you have direct relationship. Get a relationship with us. Direct contact with Rob and I throughout the year. You can post dreams. You're going to talk about the barriers you're going through, the lectures that we talked about, questions,
Yeah.
a lot of interaction with us for the year.
Yeah, you become part of the community, and I think that's so powerful to see what other people are doing and to kind of
be inspired by them.
live vicariously through their successes. It's incredible.
And yeah, a lot of the women in the group already have are artists. They're creative people. Some are corporate people, and some are really finding their passion, wanting to leave the corporate world and do something else. And you really, I just think it's going to be a huge trend. I know it's going to be a great transformation. And then another couple bonuses we have if you sign up early, only for the early people, is that you will also get we're doing 2 events next year that are about money. They're called the Creative Money Breakthrough. We're doing one in Geneva, Switzerland, and we're doing one in January in Hermosa Beach. So you also get one ticket to that event, and that ticket we're selling for $2,500. So if you sign up early, you get to attend one of those events as another bonus. And the reason why we're having so many events is because we do know that online is great because it's convenient, but we also want to interact with you in person. We want to have more FaceTime with you. So we're going to do more of that as well. And then if you sign up early, you also get access to our current leadership program. So you'll get right into Facebook right away, and you'll be able to start asking us questions and hearing the lectures we have for November and December, and be a part of the community and get started. So really, it turns out to be more of a 14-month program than a 12-month if you sign up earlier. Now, all these bonuses will go away November 15th, and they may go away sooner because we are already 50% full already in 1 week. We are almost halfway sold out because people were so excited about it. So if you are interested, please apply today. There's a link on, you get in an email after the call that will encourage you to apply if you haven't applied yet, and get a free consult. It's by application only. We don't let everyone in the program. Sometimes it's not right for certain people. They don't fit with what it's about. It's not about dating tips or, just manifesting things. It's really about creating something. And so we want people that have had some exposure to our work to be open to working with the shadow and doing the work that we do at the level we do. So want to make sure it's a right fit for both parties.
Absolutely.
And for the group.
Yeah.
So again, it starts in January, but you can apply right now. And we really encourage you to just find out about it. And we're going to send a email. I don't know how to do it on the video. We don't have a button here, but what we'll do is we'll send it to you via email and have all the information.
Yeah, and there's always surprises throughout the year because we're always tapping into those creative energies in our own unconscious, and creating new events and new possibilities, especially for our groups. And you'll be the first to be invited to these events and to these happenings.
And those of you who do feel like, you know what, I love this work and I want to invest on a higher level, I want to do private coaching with you, that's also available. We have a few spots left for private coaching with either Rob or I in this program or in our coach training program. So we do have other openings as well. If you think, oh, I like that, but I don't want to be part of a group, I want private, please let us know. We can let you know what the rates are for that. And we do have some early prices as well for those private. So should we do a little meditation? Do you want me to do it, or do you want to do it this time?
You go ahead, and I'll step to the side so I can meditate while you're doing it.
Okay, you're going to step to the side. Step aside, Dr. Rob. Okay, everyone, just a brief meditation. So close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. And just allow your body to relax. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. And I want you to imagine that in front of you is a beautiful mirror. It's decorated with beautiful jewels, gorgeous, wonderful mirror. And you're looking in that mirror and you're seeing yourself as you are today. Notice what you sense and feel and think about that projection right now, that reflection. What are the things you regret? The things you wish you had? The longings and desires that are still pushing you to do more? Maybe you look at that image and feel a little stuck. Maybe you wonder how things could change. Now, I want you to imagine that deep within your heart is a beautiful flame of light. Imagine that flame start to grow and expand. This fire of passion and purpose. Allow that to fill every cell of your body and expand all around you, this beautiful light of divine inspiration, divine creativity, divine love. And as you do this, I want you to see that that reflection starts to morph and change. That instead of seeing the ordinary you, you start to see the divine woman reflected back. Notice how she's smiling a little more, how she's more relaxed, more peaceful. Notice how she feels as though she has the world at her fingertips to create from. Feel herself being in her true power. This is who you really are. You are limitless. You are pure potential. Now think about what this woman would create if there were no limits in her life anymore. What would be possible? Just imagine that now, being that divine woman in the divine relationship, doing her divine work. Now imagine that who she is being is impacting not only the people around her, but people that she hasn't even met yet. Just being in her true self, that ripple effect, changing the world, empowering women, shifting the feminine energy of the planet, becoming more peaceful, a more creative and calm place, bringing the world back into its beautiful balance. Now imagine just coming back to the room, embodying that feeling, seeing your potential, and seeing what your potential can do to impact everything around you, and how important it is for you to step into your power and become all you've meant to be. All right, you can come back and open your eyes. And we'll do some Q&A now. There's a little button on the screen here. An anonymous attendee asked, I always have this feeling of being stuck in life. I can't see the bigger picture of life and have difficulty moving on from any situation. It took me 14 years to go back to school to do a master's in business because I thought it was scary to do now, but I can't find a job. I get rejected over time. And I'm in debt. I live with my younger sister's dorm bedroom. I have so many fears and anxiety, fear that I will never find that job, man, have children. I can't help but feel that my younger sister will find all these things before I do. And so I find myself stuck with her and controlling her. I don't know what to do, but I do imagine myself free, maybe self-employed. I just don't know how.
Right.
That's a beautiful, beautiful problem to have, is that you're stuck. Some people just think this just is the way it is, and they are actually depressed, and they don't really seek something like this, a lecture like this, to find answers. So I want, first of all, to congratulate you on reaching out and asking that very beautiful question. And really, truly, the first step is to see that your fears and anxieties are actually creating the reality. The world isn't giving you fear and anxiety, it's just reflecting back your mind. And so when you address with fear that I can't, find a job, and then you're approaching and taking action with that fear, you're kind of caught up in that loop. It's like their
Mm.
ego keeps seeing the same. It's like Groundhog Day, right? And it feels like, and I've been in those moments, where fear just overtook my mind. And I think the first step is, like you said, is to imagine yourself free. And maybe it's, you don't know if it's a gift that you haven't found a job, because maybe self-employed is something you should look for. And I know for me, I got laid off job after job after job, until finally I realized I don't even know if I like marketing that much. I had to be in a corporation, and it led me to where I need to go. So just the first step, to, don't feel like you're stuck. See this as an opportunity. See this as a way, that the stuckness, or that feeling of frustration, is your divine self saying, there's more, Mary, there's more.
Yeah, I like that she wants to be free, and really
Mm-hmm.
that is the like the essence of who we are.
Mm.
Our mind wants to be free, not in the sense of, oh, I'm going to have everything I want and just run around the world and do whatever I want.
Like I do.
That's fun too,
Mm.
but freedom in the sense that we're not conditioned by our past,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're not forced into selecting certain things in life. We can make choices about who we are and how we're going to live our life. That is real freedom, and that is what calls us to this work.
How would you suggest working with the awareness that up until now I was attracting unemotionally available men? I understand this is a mirror of my deepest driving desire, which we didn't talk about today. So now what? I do feel good about being aware of this. Thank you. Well, you have to ask yourself why you're emotionally unavailable. What is your defense mechanisms that you placed, that are not conscious, that are preventing you from connecting to another person? And so, we do a whole year program on this, but so I can't really give you a quick answer. But one of the first things I would say is, what happens to you when a man that is emotionally available approaches you and, like, kind of pursues you? Do you shut down? Um, Also, this shows up where you're afraid to share what you really feel, when you have to confront someone else and tell them how you feel, or be vulnerable. And so look at those areas and how you're conditioned in those areas. And that's really showing you a little bit of where that is.
Yeah. Yeah, here the principle again is that the world will reflect our internal mind. Now,
Mhm.
we're unconscious, obviously, of what is in our shadow mind, but we can see it in the external occurrences. So your conflict is exemplified by attracting those kind of men,
Mhm.
right? So it's an internal process that you have to look at.
What do you think this is, my ego, that keeps me from finishing Debbie's book? I don't even finish the first part. Men start to appear, ask me out. And then I have this weird feeling not to read the book and do the meditations, although it helps me a lot. I love the mindset it gives. There's a lot of resistance the ego has to we're doing work. I mean, people tell me all the time that, there's a reason why they don't want to do my programs, or
some people break their legs.
yeah, there's it's just total. It's just, that's what the program really Evolve is about you're going to face resistance. There's no question. It's not like the secret says just visualize it and do a vision board and everything's just going to flow to you. There's going to be resistance, and that is what the journey's about. It's about working through the resistance. So the resistance is the ego pushing back, which we need. We need that kind of, we need just like every hero needs a nemesis. We need that ego. Basically, it pushes up against our divine self, and that's the creative process. So it's a creative process, but I think what's happening is that you are really afraid of that deep connection or having that deeper transformation. So you're going on dates and then you're kind of shut down,
Yeah.
and you really don't want to fully have that unconsciously fully have that closeness that you consciously desire.
Right. And you also know that you're doing it right when you get resistance. You're on the right path.
Okay, we have some
comments.
Yeah, it's just some comments. Okay, on Monday, when you listed the three things, I immediately saw shame as my shadow. I was under the impression that I was a prude, good girl, or a slut sexual. My whole life flashed in front of me and saw how between sexual and celibate. Yikes. Will there be a replay? Yes, there'll be a replay. Don't you? We'll make sure we have a replay here. Let's see. Is there any more questions? You can post a question on the Q&A box, or you could post it in the chat. Beautiful. We can't do live. I don't know if I would want to do live right now, live video. I think we might screw it up. I think we'll take it slow with this. Any more questions?
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah.
But it requires a little bit of practice. So
yes.
Once we get going, then we'll be able to, show people's face, I guess, if they want to be shown.
I wonder if it was your resistance, Rob, to being on video.
I think it was yours because I was ready for it.
Yes. Well, it was a fun, here's one. Would you say that the ego is resisting change in order for us to be able to develop ourselves through the challenge so that we are strong enough to be exposed to our true potential, true nature? Yes. Very good. Very, very good. Yes. It's like if we didn't have, it's just like the butterfly, the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, the struggle of the chrysalis to break free actually strengthens its wings. And so we want to welcome resistance. If there's no resistance, a perfect example of this is celebrities or musicians. I used to work at MTV, so I saw a lot of one-hit wonders, people that, had that one-hit record and they went to fame, and they just didn't, it was just kind of like a fluke, and then they crashed because they didn't really build themselves up. And someone like Sarah Blakely, who did a lot of personal development work, she said at the event that she would ride, her commute to work is 5 minutes. She leaves an hour and drives in her car and listens to like personal development work in her car to get her mind adjusted to her work for the day. So she continues it even to this day as a billionaire to develop herself. And that's really, that's what we want. We want to be become the person. And through the resistance is really the challenge. Now, the male hero gets it by slaying the dragon and rescuing the princess. But her journey, she actually is basically cultivating and unleashing the creative gifts in herself and rescuing the guy, getting that male muse to come to the surface and really be her partner. Okay, here's another question. What insights can you give related to people who are jealous and trying to take advantage of you? You know what that is, right, Rob?
Well, I would say that it's reflecting, again, your own insecurities. And it's not to blame ourselves, and it's not to automatically make judgments about ourselves. Often there's a deeper element in us. But when we see those things that trigger us, let's say somebody being jealous triggers us or makes us uncomfortable, we start to ask what's underneath that discomfort. what's underneath that story that my mind makes up about this situation, then we start to get at what's really unconscious in us. We make the unconscious conscious through that process of being triggered.
Great answer. I'm almost 40 and single. My family's pressured me to find someone. The clock is ticking and haven't found someone. I feel like I'm late. Well, that urgency, that pressure is more of a cultural pressure, and in yourself, that is actually going to create more delay. So whenever we're feeling like it's not happening fast enough, well, guess what we're going to get? Not happening fast enough. So I would work with that feeling of urgency and go back to those three things. Is, do you want love because of pride, to make your family proud of you? Do you want love because it gives you power? Or is finding a partner going to give you some kind of protection? I would say that it seems though it's more about pride. And for me, that's what it was. It was like, I was ashamed of being single. So that's why I was driven by that. And a lot of women with business are ashamed about being poor or struggling. So they'd rather stay in their corporate job and not have to face that shame and just have that, like, I'm the VP or CEO, CTO or whatever their title is. And I'd rather have that corner office than give up to start over again and really be this beginner.
But yeah, there's also an implied question. Would this program help people like herself who are
Yes.
simply, thinking about relationships?
Yes, it definitely would. It's the journey really is to create whatever you want. Love. A lot of people do our programs and they come in for love. And one of our coaches said the other day that it's like a bait and switch. She's like, I came to find my man and I found myself, and now they're all doing other things besides finding that. Of course, some of them have the relationships and some of them have found their passion through the work, and you can find both too. And the people that they attract are actually very, very aware and open to this kind of work and to growing themselves, which is a beautiful thing in itself. You don't have to really convert anyone. They're kind of prepackaged. They'll reflect your own personal growth. I asked myself what was protecting me from getting more dates, and my mind showed me an event when I've been body shamed. I always put a lot of weight after a heartbreak, and I don't know what to do. Since that, I automatically start to eat less and lose weight naturally. What do you think is next? Well, really the next step is going beyond the ego, beyond the body, and identification with your ego, and with attachments even being thin. It's about, not that it's okay. Yeah, it's great to take care of yourself, but how do you not let your body's shape, whether it's big or little, define you, and to see yourself outside of just the body? That's really the next step. And if you are interested in this program, it's really going to help you get there. And you'll never have to worry about eating or losing, like kind of dieting, because you're really going to be in that natural flow, that you're not eating for the reasons of covering up.
Yeah.
And really, again, like those early events, again, they're a story, and it was your perception of the body shame. It could have occurred, but it's also what you made yourself believe about it. So you can own that and say, it was my story and I have the power to change it.
Yeah, and recently we've had a lot of people ask questions of that type, of the mind-body question and the health and body image. So it's something we've been developing and we want to do more of, definitely.
Do you have any suggestions related to the dance between diving deep, which takes a lot of energy, and creating support enough, nourishing ourselves to have the energy to dive deep? Well, it doesn't take a lot of energy to dive deep. The energy that it takes to dive deep is what you're dealing with is resistance from the ego. And so a lot of times when we're feeling that, oh my God, I'm exhausted with doing this work, or not our work, but in just developing ourselves, is that we're using it the wrong way. We're trying to fix something. And there's a great podcast that we did on fixing versus creating that you might want to listen to. It really is that you want to go deep, but it doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to feel like a struggle. It really is more like a treasure hunt. It's like an exploration. It should feel like light and creative and discovery, not at the work part, or that kind of heaviness to it is really more what therapy is about. And that's not what we do. It's not therapy. And so if you're finding yourself in that way, that's a sign that you're probably just working on the ego level, or really thinking that what's going showing up for you is wrong, or there's a lot of judgment around where you're at, or what happened in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, really, when people are exhausted, it's that they're so exhausted by propping up the persona and making sure it's defended, and kind of the ego mind.
Hello, Debbie and Rob. When we found out about we found out a big shadow, it is normal that hell go loose. Example, uh, being laid off, or people who talk about you badly, even though you have a different reaction and it's not too pleasant. Sometimes it's not like the bad things. It's just revealing what was already there,
Yeah.
and making it more conscious for us.
Right. It just kind of brings it up to the front, to consciousness, to
So we can,
awareness, so we can work with it.
yeah, or otherwise it's just running our life unconsciously.
Yeah.
So the ordinary person would look at these events as bad, or hell breaking loose. What if you say all heaven is breaking loose? It means that things are shifting. When I was engaged to be married to the wrong person. I was in the wrong job, and I just had this feeling like something was off. And I got laid off from. We broke our engagement. I got laid off from my job. So I would say it was when I was homeless, manless, and jobless. But it was at that point where everything in my life that wasn't working fell apart, so I can rebuild in something really beautiful. So it was the turning point in my life. So don't look at this as hell. Look at it as heaven breaking loose. Sound like a good plan?
Why not?
Okay. Do you have any suggestions for dealing with feeling threatened by other women's strength and beauty? Can you please do a podcast on this topic, especially between siblings? Yes,
That's a good
definitely.
one.
Yeah. It's other women being threatened. If you're feeling threatened by other women's strength and beauty, what you're really seeing is your own shadow of your own strength and beauty. And there's a part of you that feels like it's not safe to let her become in the forefront, that because of your reaction to it, you think other people think that's bad. There's some kind of badness to it. And so a lot of times it could be jealousy, or threat, feeling insecure. But if you can see whatever you see out there in the world as someone else out there as a potential, that means if you could see it, it's already within you. So even the most successful, the most beautiful woman is in you, and all the things that you haven't seen yet. So just even seeing that, you just have to realize that is in you too. And what are you resisting about that? And siblings, it does happen a lot, with that comparison of the sisters, and who's more successful, and competing for attention, and with the family. I mean, I think it's a natural sibling rivalry comes up.
Yeah, but it's also very useful
Mm-hmm.
to observe and to understand that part of yourself. It won't drive you anymore.
I'm trying to work through my resistance to getting into a relationship, and I'm seeing a lot of judgment of the men I attract as they're too feminine, insecure, somehow inadequate. I know it reflects my own insecurity, sense of inadequacy, and a fear of feminine. What would you recommend for integrating or accepting my own insecurities, my own feminine shadow?
Shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
That's the process right there. Is that you're going to integrate, in psychological terms, integrate those shadow unconscious elements into awareness, into consciousness. Once you are aware of them, that is, they become part of your conscious mind, you can choose whatever your reaction you're going to have to those situations, instead of reacting from that unconscious emotional element.
Okay, another question. I believe I'm in the process of transition. I've been reflecting on myself, my purpose, my relationships. At one of your events, I chose to reflect on and recognize my ego was protecting me from relationships because I associated them with pain and deceit. Though I personally experienced that, I saw it in the relationship of family and friends around me. This realization also made me look at the relationships in the workplace and friendships, and how this has influenced my interactions. However, now that I recognize this, what is my next step? What I would do is, first of all, think about the feeling of the pain and deceit, like being someone deceiving you, and that pain. And what you do is you actually go toward the feeling. What you've been doing is conditioning yourself to avoid it. Remember the pain, pleasure? So the only way to really transcend it is to let it be there without trying to fix it. And I know this sounds like opposite of what most personal development people will say, and healers will say, heal the energy and all that stuff. We feel like when you try to heal that, what you're doing is you're just conditioning yourself. You're just using those same tools that ego likes to feel better. That's why most people, it takes a long time for them to change in a lot of personal development work, because they're kind of building up their ego again. They're using the same tools, and it feels good for temporarily, but it doesn't really make a lasting change. So what you do is you examine, like, what is this pain about, and why is it so scary to me? I would just ask that question. If I am a divine woman, if I'm true pure potential, if I'm a spiritual unlimited universal self, why would this be so, why does this affect me? And you're just kind of going to hear the story, your mind does. And of course it's a process, but that would be the first step to really become aware of it and not push back, not try to fix it. And what would be so bad about letting some people think that of you, or even letting someone deceive you, like where you don't need to protect that anymore, and you can actually step outside of that old pattern and create something really powerful. And you don't even know what it is. So sometimes it's like when you let it, you step outside of it, it's just this new person just emerges, and it's like someone, you don't have to manufacture or imagine yourself as this powerful self. It just naturally fills that vacuum. How can I work with my inner Adam? Should I visualize him and say something to him? Well, we do have a process. A lot of times, if you just do that, your ego will be seeing your inner Adam through your ego's eyes. If you really want to work with your inner Adam, I highly suggest doing our Evolve program, because we're going to teach you how to work with it in the right way, so you can really get the most out of it. A lot of times, I know when I first started doing visualization, I would visualize what I wanted and visualize my ideal partner, but it was all coming from ego. It was like, this man's going to rescue me. And that'll tend to happen if you don't work with your shadow. Your inner Adam is going to be just cloaked with the ego, and it's going to have a distorted process in your life. It's going to actually start creating that kind of noise and confusion in your mind. It's a very powerful force. You want to work with it in the right way.
Absolutely. Jung always implied that without the shadow work, you can't really go into the deeper elements of these archetypes.
I've seen that I'm living out my parents' story of a man who is in love with another woman. I've done a lot of self-reflection and work on this. Any other ways to work with this? It doesn't feel like my story to own. Again, it's about doing the individuation process. It's not just kind of a quick fix. It's not about changing the story. It's about really creating something outside of the ego. And we do have programs. We have Evolve, which is a great program. If that's not really, if you just want to work on love, we do have other programs just for that. So feel free to apply or talk to one of our coaches. We have a lead coach, Teresa, that can do a consult with you, and she could take you through give you a little more one-on-one advice. And it would be great for you to at least talk to someone live directly, and can give you some next steps and some things that you can do. Okay, last question. When a man I like looks at other women, I feel less feminine or desirable. Is that normal for men to look at other women? Dr. Rob, is it normal?
Well, there is no normal per se, but if it's pulling something from you, right? If it's making you uncomfortable, then it's something that you can work with, definitely. And you should examine that, not in the sense of, blaming yourself or anything, but in a sense of, what is this showing me? What is the lesson of this, right? What can I uncover that is unconscious in me, that is creating these situations, right? Because remember, what we are experiencing is essentially arising from our own mind.
And Rob, I know he'll look at beautiful women, or we'll watch a movie and she'll be pretty. It doesn't trigger me, because I just know who I am. Like it's kind of like But before, I was always triggered when I was an ego, that competitive mind with other women. And he knows I like Robert Downey Jr. and I think he's cute, or, and he doesn't feel threatened by it either. It's just kind of normal. Like we have our little like celebrity crushes, and but we don't do it like some people do it to manipulate or to intimidate their partner, and or to build themselves up or something. And it's just, we don't have that kind of relationship. But do you think energy healing is working only on the surface? I've done that and felt even more confused.
Uh-oh.
I used to do energy healing, but that I did it for years, and it really didn't. It was, what I was really doing was working on my ego. I was doing it with the intention of, I was, pretending I was, becoming divine and spiritual, but it was really just healing wounds, which is ego. And that what was doing was suppressing and making everything that happened to me in my life. I felt like it was a lot of, core wounds and chakras being broken. And it was like all this, like that we're not seeing our potential, like we need someone else to heal it. I do believe there's energy in our system. I do believe in the chakra system. But I think the way it's been applied in a new age way has been limiting, because it comes from that therapy model that something's wrong with you, that medical model. Now, it is beautiful for physical healing. It does help to work, with the body. If you're, sending light to a certain area, if you're injured, it's beautiful for that. But when it comes to like, wounds and past lives and all that, it's like going down a rabbit hole that you'll never get, because you're trying to fix something that isn't even real. And it's like a story that the ego made up. And believe me, the ego is not really as solid as we think it is. And we talk about that in our programs, but it really is this kind of like exercise of almost like you're feeling like you're doing something spiritual, and you can feel energy. So it has that kind of placebo effect a little bit on you, but that's my personal opinion of it.
You don't want to hear mine.
What's yours?
No, you really don't. No, of course, there's things that are beyond our, let's say, scientific and logical understanding, and science itself takes that approach, right? But the way a lot of these systems are practiced nowadays, and certainly the way we see most of the things that are out there as far as energy work and all that, they seem to imply that that the self can be broken, that our mind can be broken somehow. And that goes against really the fundamental teachings of Eastern wisdom traditions. The real self cannot be damaged in any way. Therefore, what we're doing whenever we undergo healing practices, those kind of things, they're really working at a more superficial level, working with the illusion that we have, that we are our bodies and those kind of things, and sometimes we do need help with those things. But it is let's say a topic that we should do more teaching on.
I know a lot of people ask us about EFT too. We don't do EFT. We believe it suppresses the feeling, like you're bringing up feeling and then you're tapping it away. And anything when you're trying to get rid of something and we're much more, our beliefs are our ego. When you're working on beliefs, limiting beliefs, you're just rearranging the furniture. You're really working on ego. What we want to get to is the divine self that has no thought, that's pure creation. And you really can't, it's not the thinking mind. It's more the visionary mind. And that's really where you want to go. So if you find yourself saying, I'm not good enough, and, men love me, and I had those little stickers, and it's a good start. I'm not saying that they're bad or negative. It's better than thinking negative, but it'll only get you so far. I meet a therapist once a week. I find myself complaining about my past issues with my parents and abuse. I don't feel like I'm moving on. Rob?
Yeah, well, sometimes we need to look at those things. The way, and we certainly don't shy away from looking at our past and what happened and how our mind has clung to those things and is attached to that history. It's part of the work. But the way we see it is again, that it is a type of fiction that the mind has created about who we are. Now, it doesn't mean we're denying it. We're not saying it's total fantasy, but we're saying that the only way we can really experience it is as a story, as a narrative, and that's really the only access we have to those memories of the past. So we have to see them in the right context, and we have to understand the nature of the mind, so that we can then move on, as you say, and really work in a creative way instead of always looking back and reacting to past experiences.
Yes. Last question. I love your podcasts and programs. Would you be up for doing one with some steps for doing shadow work? Yes. Well, this is the Evolve program. We'll be doing shadow work, and our Being in Love program, which is now going to be a self-study because it's ending in November. We had a program for love, and we took people through the process of working with the shadow in all aspects of love, which is physical, romantic, socially. You're dealing with your shadow of commitment and your shadow in your spiritual realm. It's the topic of our book that's coming out, and so it's just on love. And Evolve is really for those who want to do a whole year program, that want to have more interaction, more live events. But we do have that Being in Love program as well, which takes you through the shadow. But we talk about on our podcast, we had some classes. We talked a little bit about the shadow, but basically here's a really quick way to work on it is look at someone who annoys you. Look at someone who really, gets under your skin. I hate the type of people that are blank, that are pushy, that are selfish, that are arrogant, or that are beautiful. Someone would say,
is that your shadow?
That's my shadow. That are, they think they're smart, or people that are dumb, or whatever it is. And whatever that is that's pulling at your shadow. It's like, those are that's what you can't be. If you don't like it, you're not going to want to be that kind of person. So for me, I was always the pleaser. So people that were really pushy and really demanding, I really didn't like. I'd be like, oh, that person is so pushy. And then I realized that I would limit myself because I didn't want to be pushy. And so I would be more compliant and complicit with behavior because I didn't want to be pushy. Like, oh, it's, I don't want them to think I'm being aggressive. And so that's the whole scenario that happened there.
Yeah.
And that's why so you work on that and then say, how does that limit my life? And then you start to see everywhere around you that this shadow has been really in control of your behavior and your choices, and you're not even realizing it. And that's the beauty of it, is the more aware you become, the more you create your life. Like Jung says, when you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And you'll think it's fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will think it's fate. Did you have something to add, Dr. Rob?
Yeah, the shadow work, the thing about it is it's so personal that everyone experiences it in a very unique and personal way. So we do give outlines and approaches to working with the unconscious mind, with the shadow, but really the real work is done when you're working in these personalized programs, like these small group programs, or a live event where you get up and ask a question, or that one-to-one coaching experience. There's nothing like it. If you're really serious about shadow work and you really want to do it, that's the way to go.
And Teresa, our coach, you can sign up for a free shadow session with her, like a love or money, and she'll take you through a process to do that as a service. If you want to, it's only one per person, but if you'd like to experience it, and then she could tell you about what kind of programs we have, and what could be useful for you where you're at. So we definitely have that service. So you could find out, I think in the email, it'll have a link as well. Or you can reply to any of our emails and say, hey, I want to get on the phone with Teresa. Can you send me her link? Oh, here, great. How do we sign up? You can actually go to, on our page, our website, debbieandrob.com. and go to on the top page, it says talk to us. You can fill out that form and you'll immediately get access to an email that will send you a link to schedule a call with her. And she's available on the weekends too. She does some calls on the weekends. And what else? Can't wait for your new book. Can you please do a meditation on finding your life purpose? I love your YouTube meditations. We do have one. We actually have a course called Answering the Call that you may be interested in. We do that. That is part of the finding your gifts and talents. And there's a bunch of meditations in there as well. Thanks to you too. Once again, beautiful and inspirational. You're welcome. Does believing in horoscopes or astrology program an identity in your mind?
Well, we can believe anything, and again, it's understanding the nature of what the mind is. What does a belief do to our mind? If we really believe something to be real, what the mind does, what the way consciousness works, is that it creates it for us, and it shows it to us as something real or apparent in the physical universe. And so it's a good question. As far as astrology, my understanding, and I think Debbie might have a different one, is that it's a projection of the person's mind, really, that they're projecting onto the charts and to the kind of the system. And Jung really agreed with this. He looked at astrology, he looked at alchemy, those kind of things. He understood it to be really a projection of the unconscious mind onto the patterns seen in the stars and the charts and those kind of things.
Yeah, I do think that. I agree with you, Rob. And I had, there's so many astrology types. I mean, there's the sun signs, there's the shamanic astrology, there's Vedic astrology. So which one is it, and what does it work? And then I also think that there's this idea that if someone tells you something's going to happen, it's implanted in your mind and you believe it. And so how do we know? And so you could use them as tools to reflect back, but I wouldn't use them as a sole guide for your life. All right. I think that's it. No more questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and your patience with the technical difficulties. We'll be doing these again, but hopefully this next time we'll have it better set up. We got a lot of new things, new lights.
This was fun.
Yeah,
I think
fun.
Being together is certainly always pleasant.
I like being with you too, Dr. Rob.
Instead of being in the
Separate
next room.
Split screen.
Right.
So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. We're glad to introduce our new program. If you're interested and involved, please apply. It's going to be sold out. We're going to close the doors. We're not letting a ton of people in this program. This isn't like 1,000 people or 100 people even. So it's going to be a small group. And because I want to have personal access to all of you, and I want to be able to talk to you and interact with you at the events and in the Facebook group and on the calls. We don't want to have just where you're not getting any attention at all. That doesn't help. So we hope you join us. And again, if you have questions and you want to, maybe this isn't the right program for you, you sign up for a free call with Teresa. She'll be happy to talk to you about what other ways to work and do a little shadow session on you. You're going to love it. Yeah. And
here's the best reason to do the program is that you'll get to hang out with all of us in Lisbon, Portugal,
or Geneva, or you can come to Hermosa Beach, where the place for our event in January and in March is right on the beach. I mean, right literally on the beach. So and if you're not a beach person, they have a nice walkway. You don't have to get your sand in your toes. It's beautiful in the winter here in LA. It's like 60s and 70s. So it's not like, humid. And so it's a beautiful place, and come see the Hollywood sign. And
Santa Claus serves here in Southern California.
That's true. Anyway, great to talk to you all and share our information with you. We hope to see you in Evolve. We hope you take the advice from us and step into the divine woman. And if you're a guy listening in, trying to get some info, the divine man in you. And we hope that you find your divine relationship, your divine purpose, and have incredible abundance and happiness in your life.
See you soon. Much love.
Signing off. Take care.